Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet, not acres.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough about who, what, when, and where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Dee.
Good morning, Carol. How are you this morning?
You know, the sun is shining and it's only 75 degrees as we're recording this. I am wonderful.
It's only 77 degrees here, and it's because of that cold front that came through where you are and through where we are, and I'm really appreciative of it.
Oh, I am too. It's going to be lovely all week, I think, with bits of spattering of rain. But tell me about your garden.
Well, it's just gross out there right now. I mean, really. We've had a lot of rain, and we have so many bugs, including grasshoppers, stink bugs, and blister beetles right now. That's not including all the things that fly. But just the grasshoppers drive me crazy because you walk out into the garden and they jump every which way and they get in your face and they're kind of, I know they can't hurt me, but they're disturbing. Plus they eat everything.
I understand. I don't like grasshoppers jumping up in my face either.
Oh, they're everywhere. And then we have the stink bugs that get on the tomatoes and, the tomatoes have slowed down and I have to pick them really early to keep the stink bugs from getting to them. And I went out there yesterday and a grasshopper had eaten off the top of a tomato, just the top.
Of course.
But it's okay. The company that makes Nolo Bait is completely sold out for the rest of the season. So I guess grasshoppers are bad for everybody right now.
I guess so. Misery loves company, Dee. Misery loves company.
Otherwise, it's not miserable. The air is pretty dry. It's warm. It's pretty warm, but it's not horribly warm. And everything looks beautiful. And I found this on the side of the road. I wanted to tell you about this. I've been watching it all season long. And it's a type of verbascum that grows wild in Oklahoma. And no, I didn't look up the name because the truth is I just thought about it. And so it's this verbascum, and I've been watching it bloom, and it's in this guy's ditch line. So today I went and pulled up the plants because he had tried to get them down. He tried to brush hog them, and they were all falling over, and they get about 6 feet tall. And I want to put them in my upper pasture. So my hope is they were close enough to seed stage. They are done blooming. And I just laid them out on the driveway and I'm hoping they'll dry and then I'm going to collect the seeds and so on. So that's my excitement for the day.
That's very exciting. So I'm picking lots of tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, zucchini. But I was mowing the other day and I saw the first mum blooms, Dee. Moms, those are
too early.
These are fall flowers. Well, I didn't hack back my mums in May to get them to bush out. And so this thing over eager beaver, I don't know what it's thinking, but it's thinking, hey, time to bloom. And I'm like, no.
Well, in Oklahoma, they'll bloom twice. I had a friend who she wouldn't do hers either. She'd let them bloom and then she'd cut them back and let them bloom again later in the fall, which isn't a bad idea. I also noted that you've got something else blooming, and it's blooming in my yard too.
The resurrection lilies are up.
The licorice, yes, they're up. Yeah, we went through a whole thing, and we should probably link to that other podcast where we talked about the licorice before.
We will do that.
Licorice. And we talk about the two types, and these are the pink ones, right?
Yes.
These are the ones you have.
Yeah,
me too.
That's all the tardy for me.
I've got the red ones later. Right. Well, I can grow the red ones too, but they come later. But yes, they just came up just like they always do, right on schedule.
So the red ones, those are what they call the schoolhouse lilies because they come up about time school starts.
Mm-hmm. And resurrection lilies are also called naked ladies because they don't have any leaves on their stems.
Or magic lilies because they just sort of appear.
Yeah, they do seem to appear. Like if you get in a garden and it's new to you, you might see some and go, where the heck did those come from?
Exactly.
I planted these here on purpose a long time ago.
Ditto.
I don't really have anything else to say. I'm also doing cucumbers, tomatoes, and squash. And my eggplant is kind of a fail. I've got an eggplant, but not like I usually do. So I suspect it needed more compost in the soil. But that's for next year.
Next year. That's our motto.
I don't care.
You ready for the quote?
I am.
There is no other occupation like gardening in which, if you were to creep up behind someone at their work, you would find them smiling. Mirabelle Osler.
Don't you smile all the time in the garden when you're not mad at it?
I don't know. Sometimes I might have a grimace on my face.
Yeah, she goes further in that paragraph because that's our book this week, everyone, when we get to the bookshelf. And she goes further in that paragraph, and there was some of it that I thought was just really, really funny.
Well,
about how hard it is sometimes.
Yeah, and I won't read the whole paragraph, but she says, the reverse does happen, of course. In summer, when I discover a plant wilting to death because a mole has bulldozed its roots, the tension and bad feeling is hundredfold.
Yeah. But then she notes that if she looks at her cat prancing through the garden, it brings that smile back to her face. And I think that's true.
And the last part was hilarious.
Yeah, but we can't say it because ours is clean.
Well, we're going to do the clean version. It says, once more, benign serenity overcomes me, and I think I won't offer the whole blank garden to my neighbor's goats after all. Everybody gets to that point where they think, I just want to bulldoze this garden and start over. Yeah,
and about this time in summer is when I feel that way. But you know what? It's going to be okay. You know, August is going to finish. September's going to come. The grasshoppers are going to slow down and go away. Thank God.
That's right.
And right now, there's a really pretty flower that is blooming in both of our gardens, which is the one we're going to talk about today.
The blackberry lily is in bloom. And the blackberry lily, as you know, Dee, is not a lily at all. It's an iris from the Iridaceae family.
Right. So it has two different names. Because we can't have, I laugh every time I think about this because Botanical Latin is supposed to unify us as a group, right?
Right.
But they keep changing everything. So it's really hard to keep up with the Botanical Latin.
So it used to be Bellum candida chinensis, and now it's Iris domestica, which was proposed in 2005, but you still find it as that Bellum candida chinensis.
So it probably has the word SYN next to it, period, which means synonym.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff now that is like that. Mums are like that too.
Right. And they call them blackberry lilies because the seed heads look like a blackberry, the little black seeds.
Yes, when it's done. Yes. And they're easy to spread around the garden.
They are, because most of them are short-lived perennials, and you just take that seed head and rub those seeds, black seeds off, and you just sprinkle them around, and you will have them again the next year. And that's what I do every year. So I'm not sure that they're actually coming up from roots every year, or they're just coming up from those seeds. But I get some every year where I scatter the seeds.
So I've never done that. I just leave the flowers, and when the flowers are finished, just all by itself, the plant lays itself over and plants the seeds. But I think what I'm going to do is gather the seeds and spread them in some places where I want them. So I thought that was a really good idea of yours. Also, you said that it can be grown in sun and shade. And here in Oklahoma, because it's hot, we grow them mostly in partial shade.
I would get that. And mine are, right now, they are actually in partial shade because the trees keep growing. And so what once was sunny is now partially shaded.
Yeah, which is also in that book that we read this week. She talks a lot about trees growing and how it changes your garden. And Bill and I are looking into, speaking of changing the garden, Bill and I are looking into putting in a pool, which I haven't even talked to you about. Because we can't go anywhere, we can't do anything. And so we decided we might want to take our travel money and put in a small pool, just a rectangle, right?
That would be nice.
The point of this is, yeah, because we're not going to move anytime in the next 20 years, probably. There are some trees there where we want to put it, and we will have to take those out. Well, guess what those trees do? Because we're putting the pool next to my garden, which I just gave you the hint.
They shade your garden.
They're the trees that are over by my Annabelle hydrangea. So The trees that are right by it will stay, and it'll still get some shade from the house, but that's going to change the garden dramatically. So, back to blackberry lilies. If you grow them here, you want to grow them in partial shade. And at your place, they do well in both. Now,
Right.
tell me about candy lilies, because I'll be honest, I don't know a doggone thing about those.
So candy lilies, and you can buy these seeds at Park Seeds. It's closely related. And at one time, it was touted as the example of crossing two plants from different genuses.
Right.
And so, which oftentimes when you try to cross a plant from two genus, you don't get viable seed. And so,
not very often. Sometimes
No.
they have to tissue culture them now, but these do, right? These you can cross.
well, it gets a little more confusing, Dee, because they cross Pardenthopsis dichotoma
Okay.
with Vellum candida chinensis.
which used to be classified as iris dichotoma, right?
Yes.
And Bellum candida chinensis is now known as iris domestica, and I see where you're going with this.
So it isn't a cross between two genuses like we thought. They're both probably iris genus. So
Right.
if you see the X in front of a plant name, like it used to be X pardon Canda norrisii, that X meant that it was the X at the beginning of the genus means it was a cross between two genus. A hybrid that's a cross between two species of the same genus has the X in between the genus and species.
Well, that's fascinating because I never knew about the X in front, although I've seen plants that do that. There's one in particular I can think of. So if the X is, let me make sure I've got this right. If the X is in front of the botanical name, it means it's an intergeneric cross.
Correct.
But in this case, this is probably not an intergeneric cross because they're probably both part of the Iridaceae family, and they are also part of the genus Iris.
Correct. You got it
Probably.
straightened out. And so we should back up because our listeners are going to go like, what was that I just heard? What? So this to say blackberry lilies, they're lovely. Plant some in your garden for some late summer bloom. I like how when they're done blooming, the petals kind of twist up into a little spiral thing before the seed forms.
Yeah, they're pretty.
And I think they're fun and easy, and you should just have them.
And if you know somebody who has blackberry lilies in their garden, I'm trying to remember, I think I probably got some from somebody. It's not something I see sold a lot. I'm sure you can buy the seeds.
You can buy seeds. Oh, sure. Yeah. But if you know somebody, just say, hey, can I have a
They'll just share them with you. Yeah.
Hand them over. So I can think of no pests of these. They're pretty carefree.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. I mean, nothing here. Now, I will say they are usually blooming here in midsummer. And I need to go look outside because mine are in my front border. And I need to go look at them and see if they've just finished blooming because I bet they have seeds. I bet mine are at the seed stage.
Mine are not at the seed stage. So next week, let's talk about a lily that I think is actually a lily.
Okay, so people will come back and listen to us again. We're going to talk about another lily that actually blooms in the fall.
Right. So don't tell them what it is. Don't tell them what it is.
We aren't going to say what it is. You got to come back.
That's right.
So can I do the second quote?
You can.
Starting a garden is the beginning of making a series of mistakes. Also, Mirabelle Osler. Yes. You will just make mistake after mistake after mistake.
My gosh. I could fill a book with them.
Me too. Maybe that's what we should write. All the mistakes that we've made together.
Yeah. Yeah. How many volumes is that going to be, Dee?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know. You know, I have in my garden an old watering can, and it has a bunch of labels in it. And the labels are all things I killed. It's fun.
I got a big basket of, I did YouTube videos. I was sorting my plant labels, and I just did YouTube videos for fun. They've been viewed all of about 10 times. But anyway,
they're famous.
I have a bunch of those labels, and I'm like, what do you do with your dead label pile? Anyway.
Mine are in my deal, yeah. So today we're going to talk about an unusual vegetable. It's getting less unusual now. It's tomatillos.
Yes.
And tomatillos I've grown a lot, and you've never grown them, so you said you were going to interview me which is
So,
hilarious.
Dee, what are tomatillos?
Okay, so tomatillos are a relative, like the wild cousin who goes drinking out at the bar of tomatoes. You know, the wild cousin you have to go drag out of the bar, that's a tomatillo.
I'm trying to think if I have such a wild cousin, and I don't know that I do, or that any of them actually listen to this podcast if I name them. But anyway, we shall move on.
Yeah, probably so. But anyway, this cousin, this wild cousin, which is part of the nightshade family, you can do the Latin.
Solanaceae.
Solanaceae. It is a cool plant, and I've grown them for several years. This year, I'm growing Dr. Witchy's yellow. It's a variety.
Yeah, and there's also a Dr. Witchy's yellow tomato, and there's also a Dr. Witchy's Cherokee Trail of Tears pole bean. So I looked up about Dr. Witchy, who is from Oklahoma.
Hugo.
And you know more about him than I do. Tell us.
I don't know that much about him. I know that his ancestors were Cherokee, and I think he was also part of the tribe. I think he died in 1985. He was one of the founders of Seed Savers Exchange. And so he is famous for that Trail of Tears pole bean, which can be harvested fresh or dried. He was also famous for Dr. Witchy's yellow tomato. But he had a lot of different seeds. Those seeds are named after him. And then Dr. Witchy's yellow tomatillo is named after him, which I didn't know until this year when I bought some from Lisa up at the Tomato Man's Daughter. She had some plants. And I like tomatillos. I like them a lot. And so I like to cook with them. So.
But the most amazing thing you wrote here is, Dee, you say he used to own a circus and he used elephant manure to fertilize his garden.
Yes, because he had elephants. Isn't that crazy? Well, you know, Hugo.
Well, yeah, and if you have elephants, you probably got a lot of poo to use for stuff.
I imagine they have a lot of manure. Hugo was, and I may have this wrong, but I'm almost sure it was Hugo, the town. It was the winter grounds for several circuses and still is considered that. So if there are traveling circuses coming around, they often winter in Hugo, Oklahoma, probably because of Dr. Witchy. And so it doesn't surprise me that he had elephant poo, but I thought that was really cool.
That is cool. And you can use elephant poo because elephants are vegetarians. And so you could use their manures.
Yeah, it probably is very good manure. But, you know, none of us have a spare elephant around, which is okay.
Well, speaking of spare elephants, I did want you to know that in my book, Creatures and Critters, Who's in My Garden, I do write about the elephants in your garden. And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. I don't know that one. That's
You'll
cool.
have to go look at the book.
That's really cool.
So, on with the interview. So how should you grow tomatillos?
You grow them exactly like tomatoes. They need full sun. When you can start the seeds indoors, just like you do tomatoes, or you can buy plants. I'll be honest, I've always bought plants. Because I only want 2 plants. They make a lot of tomatillos. So you buy 2 plants. You need 2 plants because they need to cross-pollinate. Okay? Unlike tomatoes. They don't.
Does it have to be 2 varieties or just 2 plants?
Just 2 plants. It doesn't have to be 2 varieties. And they have male and female flowers, but I'll be honest, I've never really looked at them that closely. So you plant them in full sun, you bury them to the top, 4 leaves, right? Like you do a tomato plant. And bumblebees and carpenter bees love to pollinate tomatillos, so you're going to see them in your garden if you grow tomatillos. But they won't hurt you. And I want to be clear about that. They won't mess with you at all. And then you harvest them. They need an inch of water a week, just like all vegetable plants. But when you harvest them, they have a papery husk on the outside, like a ground cherry. And then you just wait until they fill that husk. And they're still green usually, although I will say the Dr. Witchy's yellow does turn kind of yellow, and it's still fine. It's sweeter, of course, when it's yellow. And then they're super easy. There's nothing to them. And you'll get a big, huge rush of them all at once. And that's good because you're going to want to make sauce with them.
So don't get too far ahead on that. How do you eat them?
You can eat them fresh and they taste kind of citrusy, but I'll be honest, I don't like them fresh very much. So I either roast them or I boil them in a little bit of water until they get nice and soft. And then I add them to something I want to make.
So what's your favorite dish to use them in?
Salsa verde. So I love chicken enchiladas, and I love them with salsa verde. And you just, chicken enchiladas are super easy to make. And then you make the sauce and put it on the top, and then put some nice cheese on top. They're wonderful. But you can use salsa verde on almost anything. I mean, there's lots of different recipes, especially in Mexican cuisine, that you can use salsa verde for. And that people think that salsa verde is almost all peppers, but it's not unless you're in New Mexico. New Mexico, it's very hot. But in Oklahoma and Texas and Arizona, salsa verde has a lot more tomatillos in it. That's why it's green.
So I am thinking now that maybe I will grow them experimentally next year.
Yeah, be interesting.
We shall see.
Yeah, they're fun to grow. They're easy to grow. One year I grew what I called a Hispanic garden, and I grew pinto beans and tomatillos. And that's when I first started growing chili peppers. And now I grow chili peppers every year. There is an avocado dip that has tomatillos in it, and we're going to link to that in our show notes. And it is really good.
Okay, I have noted that we shall provide that link. All right, are you ready to move on to the bookshelf?
I am. I do want to give a little, what is it called? Foreshadowing for next week.
Sure.
We're going to talk about another vegetable that might be related to tomatillos.
Okay, we can do that. All right. You going to do this next quote, or you want me to?
I think you should, because I did last one.
We have learnt one thing the hard way. It is this: take other gardeners' advice on design or accept their plants only after you have seen their gardens. Once again, Maribel Osler. So we read her book, A Gentle Plea for Chaos, The Enchantment of Gardens, which got published on January 1st, 1990.
Interesting.
And I think the emphasis on this book ought to be on the subtitle, The Enchantment of Gardens, A Plea for Chaos. And you and I both would say that's not the easiest book to get into.
No, it's not at all. It's
but
hard.
If you kind of skip past where she starts going down through a litany of like all the trees and things, there are, as we've shown from the quotes, some nuggets of wisdom in there.
Quite a few, actually. And I think that last quote is a really good one out of the book, because what she's talking about is all the people in that chapter. She's discussing all the people that have helped them with the design of her garden. And she's saying, I listen to the people whose gardens I really like. And her whole point of this book is to say, don't overweed the area. Don't overstake everything. Let it have a little bit of chaos so that it has a flow. That's part of it. The part I thought was hard to get into was the part in the beginning where she's discussing all the trees they put in, because they did need backbones for the garden, but she lists every tree, and she lists them all in Latin, and it's long.
And I had to laugh too, because there's another quote. How paltry it is to have only this one word, garden, to describe so many diverse creations. And I think she really speaks to having the garden be your individual definition of the word garden. So you don't have to have it like the neighbor next door, or you have your own definition of garden. My back garden, I swear to you, looks very different from any other back garden in this neighborhood.
Well, and my garden definitely looks different from anywhere else in this neighborhood. A few people have vegetable gardens, but not ornamental gardens too. And I think you have to do what you think is right. We have one friend who tries to give me a lot of advice periodically on my garden that's unsolicited, and I just have to let it go in one ear and out the other. Not that she doesn't know things, because she does, but my garden's my garden.
So, but it does annoy me when someone comes over to the garden, if they have a bit of knowledge, or even if they don't, when they say, you oughta move that plant over there, or wouldn't it be really nice if that chair was over there, or, this is a good place for, and it's like, okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think that they're missing the point. When you go to visit a garden, and people often don't want me to come visit because they think I'm an expert, which I just know some stuff about gardens. I never consider myself an expert. Because gardening is one of those topics that your whole life is spent on it and you're still learning, like Thomas Jefferson said, right?
Yes.
So when I go to someone's garden and I look around, I'm really charmed by the plants. Like I just went to visit a friend's garden a few weeks ago and I could tell she was nervous to have me there. And I was like, don't be nervous. I think your garden is charming. And I'll be honest, I think almost every garden I've ever seen is charming.
Yes. Especially if it has the personality of the gardener in it.
Right. Because I don't think it's a garden if it doesn't. I think that's a landscape. And that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, and I've been to garden tours where we saw landscapes.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Where the homeowner probably, was some high-powered attorney or doctor or surgeon who rarely had time to step out into their garden, but it did look nice the way the landscaper had it.
Exactly. And so sometimes so she would have said, Maribel, I'm calling her by her first name now. I feel like we're first name friends. Maribel was saying, let your garden be you. And I think that's the best thing you can get out of this whole thing. And right now, when you were talking, I was thinking about a garden that we saw that was a very wealthy person. And I'll be honest, I cannot remember where it was. We'll have to talk about that off camera, as they say.
Right. And I will say I've seen gardens where clearly the owner had a ton of money to sink into it.
Right.
But they made a point, and it was on a garden tour, they made a point to say, she or he, this is their garden. They work out in this garden. So yeah, have they invested a lot of money in it? Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's not bad to invest a lot of money in a garden unless you don't have a lot of money to invest and you did it anyway.
Right.
But I digress. It was a beautiful garden.
So what you're saying is it is okay to have a landscape designer come in and help you design. I'm so in favor of that. If you can, as long as you get to put your own ideas into it. And one of the gardens I was thinking of when you were talking was a one that was a prairie type garden. And it was absolutely beautiful. And the person who lived there spent a lot of time in the garden and wanted a certain type of garden to benefit pollinators. And that's what I was thinking of, exactly what you said.
Yes.
It still reflects them.
There was one other thing in this book that I had to laugh. She talked about the penstemon ladies.
Yes, that was hilarious.
And so the penstemon ladies, and this happens, and you probably had this happen when you had your daylily garden on tour.
Oh, yeah.
They come in, and they're so focused on the individual plants, and they're trying to figure out, is this daylily Hyperion, or is this another daylily? And they're trying to identify down to the variety and see if they know them all. And she had some ladies coming in to look at the penstemons, and, instead of seeing the garden, they're trying to figure out, is that King George, or is that Evelyn? Or is that sour grapes, And so I laughed at that. I'm like, I never want to be a penstemon lady. Never.
So they missed the garden for the penstemons.
Yeah, because they were trying to figure out.
Like missing the forest for the trees.
And Maribel Osler wrote another book in 1998, and I'm actually reading it. And it's called A Breath from Elsewhere. And it's...
Did you like it?
I like it better so far. For a variety of reasons. It has no pictures. The pictures in this book seem to be disjointed from the text. And I know you had it on your Kindle, so you didn't have the pictures.
I didn't have pictures.
They're just there because people think that gardening books ought to have pictures. And the second book is really why gardening books don't have to have pictures.
Yes, which she kind of touches on in this book too. So I hope we've encouraged people to read garden authors that are no longer with us.
Right.
By talking about this book, because there's a bunch of them.
So let's talk about our dirt really quickly. That we have an overflowing harvest, and you found a very good cookbook.
So on the newsstands right now, there's a magazine that's put out by Better Homes and Gardens, which is Meredith Corporation. They put out a lot of magazines. This is 100 Best Tomato Recipes, and it is I think it's a really good magazine if you've got a lot of tomatoes. A lot of original type innovative recipes, not hard. And I made a couple of them out of there, and I just enjoyed looking at it because I have so many tomatoes and I've been putting them in the freezer right and left. Then my best friend, Amy, non-gardening best friend, Amy, although I said I can't call her that anymore because she grows houseplants now.
Okay.
I know. Okay, so Amy, she made us this amazing Cobb salad out of another magazine called America's Test Kitchen Best Ever Salads. And you can also find it on the newsstand right now, too. So they have wonderful recipes for all the garden bounty, and they are
Low tech.
low tech. And right now, we are loving low tech. I feel like I've reclaimed my life.
Exactly.
And I love magazines. And I think next week, we should talk about gardening magazines that still exist.
We will do that.
As our dirt.
We will do that.
I thought about today because I was reading a gardening magazine and I thought, oh my gosh, the pleasures of reading gardening information on a page.
Right. And
so this is harvesting information on a page.
And this whole thing got me wondering, what happened to my mom's old cookbooks? She didn't have many, but I kind of want them now. I have to query my sisters to see.
You have to talk to your sisters. I bet it's at your sister's house that lived with your mom.
Yeah, it's somewhere. But it's like, I think I want those back.
It's funny that you bring that up because my daughters love the Better Homes and Gardens old cookbook, which my mom had one from 1965. I had one from 1980. I went on eBay and bought Megan, my older daughter, one from 1952 because it has a certain peanut butter cookie recipe in there, a chocolate chip cookie, things like that. Things that are our family's recipes. Can't beat those.
No, you can't. And so now I'm hungry, so let's wrap this up so I can go have some lunch. We want to thank everybody.
Sounds good.
We want to thank everybody for listening to The Garden Angelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us.
And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, we would love a review. That helps us get noticed by others. Plus, while you're there, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single episode.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye.